I'm Nic Harcourt for AKG Stories Behind the Sessions, where some of the biggest artists, producers, and engineers in the music business share some of their candid moments from behind the scenes. Join me now as we take a look back at some of the highlights of Season 1. Here's Art Alexakis of Everclear talking about bartering for studio time to make World of Noise.
I saw these hipster-looking dudes going in and out of this basement, and I thought for sure it was a drug deal, right? You know, because at this point I'm clean and sober 2.5 years. I see the guy and he goes, "Hey, aren't you in that band, Evergleam?" And I go, "No, Everclear." He goes, "Oh, yeah. And he goes, "Hey, you want to see my studio?" I go, "Is that what's going on over there?" And I went and looked at his studio, and he had some really good mics. He had some 414s and, egg crates on the wall and stuff. But it sounded pretty good. And I go, "How much are you charging?" He goes, $10 an hour. I go, "Would you take some trade?" I got old MIDI verb.
Right.
I don't know if you remember MIDI verb.
Sure.
And
so you're basically bartering.
I bartered.
For your...
I got $400 worth of trade for it.
So you got 40 hours in the studio.
Yeah. I wanted to see what I had. I wanted to see what it sounded like on tape.
Here's Robert Margouleff discussing teaching Stevie Wonder how to play the home-built 6-module synthesizer Tonto, and then creating a library of material that became the album's Music of My Mind and Talking Book.
Put his hands all over it, and we explained what it was. And he got up a few sounds, and he started to play, and he said, "Hey, there's something wrong with this thing. I'm playing all these notes, and we're only playing one note at a time." And Malcolm says, "Yeah, you know, the synthesizer is more like a saxophone or a trumpet. It takes your whole body and your embouchure and the whole feeling and sensibility just to play one note on a saxophone, to make it really sound soulful, that you had to have your total energy into it." And I said, "Yeah, and the synthesizer is like that too. You only play one note at a time." We had one synth, Tonto was actually 6 synthesizers all tied together.
How many modules were there that made up Tonto?
Oh, I don't know, but we're going to go and fool around with it up in Calgary in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to play it one more time.
Right. So you did, the first record with him was Music of My Mind.
Right.
And then its follow-up was Talking Book, which had massive hits on it, Superstition and You Are the Sunshine of My Life.
But you understand that we never really recorded for record. It wasn't, Stevie's lawyer wouldn't come in and say, Vagoda, he'd come, "Steve, we got to make a record now. What are you going to write for it?" When we started working with Steve, we created an archive or a library. We just recorded songs as they fell out of his head.
Right.
I think we had maybe, by the time we did Music of My Mind, I think we must have had 50 songs, 40 or 50 songs in the library, all in different places in development. And Steve would go through and we would pick the songs. He would pick, "I want this one, I want that one." And then we say, "Steve, you can't do that." And he'd say, "Why?" He says, "Because that's enough for a double album. You know, you got to cut it down a little bit more." So it was always a process of winnowing and deciding what was going to go where. But those songs were not recorded in order for album Music of My Mind or Talking Book or whatever. It was a library.
So there was like a whole bunch of songs
Yes.
that were then pieced together into the albums.
Yeah, and then we would choose.
Now Rudy Sarzo shares his wonder at the innovative musical virtuosity of his late bandmate Randy Rhoads from Quiet Riot and Ozzy Osbourne.
I was teaching bass, and in between lessons, I could hear Randy playing classical music. And I go, I didn't know you could play it like that. And he says, yeah, we don't do this in Quiet Riot.
Right.
Okay. But once he joined Ozzy, he asked Ozzy, "What do you want me to write?" And Ozzy said, "Just be yourself." And that's when he said, "Okay, now."
Now you get to see what I can really do.
Exactly. And that's how you get Blizzard of Oz record and Diary of My Madness. I mean, they're both musical, compositionally leaps and bounds. From Blizzard to Diary, his compositions. And those were recorded within weeks of each other. It's just amazing, you know. So that, to me, when I go on stage, that's my light. the musical integrity that Randy Rhoads showed me. This is what it takes. You know, Randy, he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by himself, not with a band, but as Randy Rhoads, with 2 records. Such an impact in such a short time.
Here's Cliff Martinez on learning how to use the studio after being drafted in to play drums on the Red Hot Chili Peppers' self-titled debut album.
What did you learn from that time? As you mentioned, none of you had really spent much time in a studio making records. What did you come away with from that time?
I suppose I thought that there was like vast potential for recording. We had done, I think we had some brass on the record, a little bit on a song called Hank. I brought in some junk metal percussion, some brake drums and pipes and stuff that we had on a track. And I thought that overall, I kind of liked the process of recording. So I was inspired by the possibility of multi-track recording and editing. It was kind of primitive at the time. I think there was a sampler, an AMS. I think they swapped out my snare drum for my real snare drum for a sample of a snare drum. So I was impressed with the possibilities of the recording studio and the beginnings of, what later became an explosion of new computer technology and music. I suppose that was my big takeaway. And subsequently, I guess I wasn't quite as intimidated by the studio as I was initially.
Check out No Doubt drummer Adrian Young telling us about making Tragic Kingdom in 11 different studios and the vindication the band felt when the album hit.
Can you take us through the process of making Tragic Kingdom? You told me when we spoke as we were prepping for this conversation that you recorded it in 11 studios?
11 studios. For the reasons I mentioned before, it was, we found it, the label would call, we found a good deal in a studio in Santa Monica. Can you guys be there tomorrow? Okay, here we go. Yay. And we're excited. We're still young and we're hungry. And, just to have the opportunity was something that we were very interested in. And so there was a lot of those starts and stops.
So by the time the album was mixed and ready for release at the end of 1995, did you guys think you had hits on the album?
Oh, no. It felt like a miracle that we that No Doubt would even be on the radio, even
Right.
in 95 or 96.
Right.
It just, got to remember, it was still like, it was the Chili Peppers and Green Day and The Offspring. And, was there an avenue there for No Doubt? It still felt foreign for a bit. So yeah, when we finished this record, did we feel like, fuck yeah, we've got a hit record there?
Right.
I think my personal goal was if we sell 100,000 copies,
Right.
that's going to feel amazing.
You were just relieved to get to the end of the process by the sound of things.
Yeah, and go on tour. That was a big goal.
So when Just a Girl started getting picked up on the radio, I'm guessing that the label started offering tour support.
There was more of it. yeah, definitely. No, it felt very different. It felt way more real.
Was there a sense of vindication?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Felt deserved because we had worked, the band had been together at that point for 9 years and got a song on the radio. And, to be told that to take an act of God for this band to get on the radio, and there we were. So I'm not a believer per se, but, to have someone to make a strong statement like that,
Right.
Vindication was part of it for sure.
This is Garry Beers of INXS, taking us into the studio as the band write and record their international breakthrough album, Kick.
I know that you made the majority of the album in a studio in Sydney called Rhinoceros, very famous studio. From when I lived in Australia, I was very aware of that studio. Made some great records there, obviously.
Yeah. Rhino was a magic studio.
Yeah. take us through the process. I mean, were the songs ready when you hit the studio, or did you write in the studio?
There was a lot of writing in the studio. Andrew's demos, they sound like what the end product will lean towards, but he purposely leaves them pretty empty. The extreme is Need You Tonight, which he had is pretty much exactly how he recorded on his demo, is what you hear. Plus us overdubbing me a fuzz bass, John some overdub drums, Kirk doing all his fantastic sort of noodly guitar. But it's basically his demo because it was just so good. Why try and recreate it? And by then, his home studio stuff was, technology had moved ahead, and he had some pretty good stuff at home.
Right. Can you give us an example of any of the other songs that are on the album that perhaps came together a little bit differently?
Yeah, the title track, Kick. I mean, again, Chris Thomas said, I'm not hearing enough songs, not hearing all the hits. So he sent Andrew Margouleff, I think they went to New Zealand and wrote, to get away from everything, and wrote Kick, I think Calling All Nations and Need You Tonight. And Kick was a very basic thing, based around the chord progression and a Motown bass line, which was always my bread and butter. I mean, I grew up on James Jamerson and then John Paul Jones from Zeppelin and his Motown influence. That's my bread and butter of where I learned bass.
Right.
So my bass lines probably influenced him to put that kind of style of bass on his demo, and then I just took it and ran with it on the song. So, and that song in particular grew in the studio.
Watch producer Walter Afanasieff taking us through the process of creating the biggest holiday song ever, Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas.
And she said, why don't we write a few originals? So I started banging out these, rock chords. And
Just tinkling away at the piano.
Almost like a boogie woogie. And it ended up being sort of like the foundation of the melody that you hear. I don't want a lot for free. So we kind of plunked it out. I had to go home. I lived in San Francisco and I had my studios there. And she stayed in New York to work on her lyrics.
Yeah, so you're back at home in San Francisco. How did you set about recording the track?
So I kind of left it up to my own sort of intuition. So what would I do here? Oh, I know what I can do. And so I ended up playing the piano part. It had this rubato intro, which was the very first, kind of like the verse starts very slow rubato. And I didn't even know if she was going to like that. So I kept going and I built on this whole track. I did all the drums with my, MIDI. I did all the music. I did all the synths, all the strings, all the timpani, everything. And I created this track and it was just, what it is, what you hear now. Knowing the whole time, though, we were going to get into the Hit Factory in New York, because that's what we wanted to do, is we wanted to end up with a really great band of live musicians.
Didn't you originally want a real orchestra as well?
Yeah, we wanted a real everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, Christmas music.
Yeah.
So my intention was to go balls to the walls. We were going to do, this religious song we did, Jesus Born on This Day. That was going to be an orchestra with a kids choir and the whole thing. And in keeping with this whole plan, I was going to hire, I did hire Omar Hakim on drums. I had Greg Fillinganes on keyboards. I had Dan Huff on guitar. I had all these wonderful musicians,
players,
Randy Jackson, I think, on bass or something like that. But anyway, we all ended up at the Hit Factory. And we were going to do All I Want for Christmas Is You, but the real way. So we had, top musicians, and it just tried it again.
Just didn't work with the band.
Didn't work out. Kept referring to this demo I did at home, which was this one-man computerized version.
Right.
And it just didn't work. So we kept trying again and again, and then finally Mariah's husband Tommy came to me and goes, "You know what? This doesn't sound right. We're going to go with the track you did." So okay, great. So she started her vocals, and it was so fast and so easy and so kind of like not thinking about it. It's just a song. We just did a song. Nobody knew it was going to do what it was going to do. In fact, nobody even it was probably the least who cares song on the album.
Next up, Nick Hexum of 311 talks about the group's cross-country journey and losing the band's gear in an RV fire, but not missing a beat on their tour.
So we were driving from one gig to another in Missouri. We didn't have enough, we wanted it to be able to spread out in the RV, so we decided to tow a van full of our equipment. So we had this huge RV plus towing a Volkswagen van that was completely full of our equipment. So we're really, stressing this engine, and we were having a problem with backfiring. We were like, we probably should get that fixed. We tried to adjust the carburetor or whatever, and we're like, I guess we're just gonna live with the backfiring. The backfiring eventually caught, it's an explosion in the exhaust line, and enough explosions eventually caught the floorboard on fire. And then I'm like losing power. I'm like, what's going on? And by the time I get to the side of the road, I can just see like flames coming because the fire got to the gas line.
Oh.
I'm like, major fire, major fire. We pull over, kick open there's just one door and it's halfway down the length of the RV, and open the door and there's just like flames coming in. Like, go, go, go. Everyone's just jumps out. I'm the last guy to get out because I was driving.
Right.
And I just jumped into like a sea of flame.
You actually
orange
went
everywhere.
through the fire to get out.
Yes. Trial by fire.
Jesus.
Scampered up the embankment on the side of.
Just watched it all burn.
Yeah.
All your stuff.
Yeah. Well, we tried to kind of like, maybe we can save the van. I thought we could, get the equipment out of the van, but we're like, it's gonna blow. It was like straight out of a movie. But the fire was so intense that it actually turned the interstate into gravel. It like cooked the interstate. It was just nothing but like burnt sand after this huge, 100 gallons of gas goes up in flames.
So where do you go from there? You've got a record that's getting some attention.
Yeah.
Record label's not funding you anymore. You're out on your own, figuring out how to do it on the cheap. You lose your stuff.
Yeah.
How do you pick up from that?
Well, we borrowed equipment from local musicians, opening bands wherever we went. Found a friend in Omaha whose dad, lent us some money to.
I was going to say, not another RV.
No, we actually did get another RV, but it was a lot newer. Right. We took out a loan to buy an RV, and this one like had a warranty and was newer, and we loved having the.
And
RV.
you didn't miss a beat. You just kept going.
We only canceled that night's show.
And finally, Grammy Award-winning producer Neal Pogue shares the story behind the horn arrangements on TLC's massive hit, Waterfalls.
That was a session that was like at 2 a.m. in the morning, something like that, give or take. And, the producers, Organized Noise, had the idea of bringing horns in. And it was late. So they called these horn players after midnight, which is not, which is unusual for horn players.
Sure.
But they came down, but no one had a plan. They were like, okay, what are we gonna do? And so I was pretty tired, and I said, you know what, I'm just gonna tell them what I hear. And so I just gave them the parts, told them what I hear, because I'm, me being well versed on, on certain groups that had horns, like Earth, Wind and Fire, and and Kool and the Gang, and all these early, Brass Construction, or all these early horn, bands, the Ohio Players too. So all those horn bands are in my head. So that was easy for me to say, hey, let's try this, let's do this. So I came up with the arrangement for it, which was pretty fun. It was late, I was tired, but it became fun.
So when you're saying that you hear those things in your head, how do you then let somebody know what you're hearing so that they can do that setup?
Because the music always talks to me. So hearing that song and hearing the arrangement, I'm always hearing melodies inside my head. So that's what I heard. So whatever I heard, so what made sense to the song, that's what I told them to play.
I'm Nic Harcourt. Thanks so much for joining us. Check out more stories behind the sessions from AKG Acoustics on YouTube.
Originally, you wanted to make it in LA.
No, they wanted me to make it in LA.
Shall I do that again?
Yeah.
Shine with me, kid. I'll make you as famous as the Beatles.
Tights, we don't wear tights.
Yeah.
It was distasteful. It wasn't particularly musical,
Was this
But-
for your own entertainment?
but somebody had to do it.